Hello and welcome to ICEF Monitor. I'm sitting here with Uri Carnat from IDP Education in Canada. You're the Director of Business Development and Client Relations. Thank you for coming. In your presentation this week, you stressed about the importance of onboarding new agents. Could you wrap up your presentation and what were your key points for our audience?
Sure. Well, certainly the onboarding, I think, is part of sort of a best relationship practice, and in the formation of a new agreement or in the maintenance of an ongoing agreement, it's very important that education providers make sure that they are providing their agent partners, their recruiting partners, with the proper information and in a format that their agent partner can use internally. So first of all, I think they have to understand in what manner the counselors of the agency are sharing information with students, and then after that, there's the inevitable survey that has to be filled out, and no one likes to do it. But I think what I mentioned yesterday was it's unfortunate if students get the wrong information because the education provider hasn't taken the time to share this information on request with their agents, with their partners. So certainly the onboarding process, yes, is making sure that the information is provided initially, and then in a recurring annual cycle or monthly cycle that this information is updated.
In your presentation, you talked about the onboarding process of new agents.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this process and how do you do it? What advice can you give?
Sure. Well, certainly giving advice to education providers. I mean, onboarding, I think, is an essential part of just relationship management in general, which the talk was about. And it certainly happens at the beginning of a relationship between an education provider and an agent, and I think, of course, then has to happen in a recurring, ongoing basis after that. What I mean by onboarding from an agent perspective, and therefore advice to educational providers, is making sure that your agent partner has your essential information in the format they need to properly counsel students, because the background and the foreground to all of this is that we need happy students and successful students and well-educated students, and that ultimately happens when the student is studying in the right program at the right school, in the right region, in the right country, and that only happens when they're given the right information. And I think certainly both parties are responsible for making sure they're providing the right information, but ultimately the education provider needs to make sure that their agent partner has the correct and regularly updated data.
Can you give an example, or can you give some advice how the education provider can do that, or what would you recommend there?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that we have to be is realistic about the time that is needed as an investment in a good relationship between an education provider and their agent. It certainly requires time to provide this information, and sometimes that information has to be changed into a format unique to each agent. There's some resistance, I think, internally with some education providers, and everyone is very busy, and perhaps they don't always want to take the time to produce or format this information uniquely each time. That being said, I think it could be a case of adjusting expectations somewhat and understanding that it really will serve the long-term interest of students in general if education providers do make sure to understand the CRM system, the database, the information management system used by their agent partner. If they certainly can have some visibility into that, but that they're able to provide information that does suit that unique system.
Let's change this perspective here a little bit, or maybe you can give me some insights of how IDP is doing that.
Well, we're very lucky to have a global proprietary CRM system called OSCAR, and really this tracks every point of contact we have with our students. It similarly tracks every point of contact that, in fact, we have with our education provider clients. And every one in the organization has a different window or access to OSCAR, to this information. But we also have a client portal, and so of course, well, students can see their information, but our education provider partners can go in and look at all the students in the portal and see where they are in the process of their journey. Similarly, they have a view of how all of their programs are represented in our system, and there's a feedback mechanism where they can suggest any changes or improvements that they'd like to see.
Another topic you pointed out in your presentation was the importance of an annual communication cycle. Why is it so important for an agency or for an educator as well to have a strategic approach there?
Well, I think any good relationship is defined by an understanding of your partner, and it's a very busy world, and we're all wrapped up in a number of projects. And one thing that we've taken some time to research and to document for us, and I think certainly for education providers need to do this too, is to understand the annual schedule of their agent partners. It could be, what is their financial year? What is their budgeting cycle? At what point do they plan all their travel and all their investment efforts? There's nothing worse than a good request that comes at the wrong time. So ultimately, the best partnerships are when you're able to work together, whether it's on marketing projects or at various events around the world. But that can only be successful if those requests are timed properly.
So once the onboarding process has been accomplished, has been completed, what can an education provider do to make sure the information stays current?
Sure. Well, again, this is in the context of well-informed students and well-guided students. And I think, again, it really gets back to an education provider being realistic, that the concept of training is really about retraining, and a constant retraining and a constant engagement and constant communications. So what is the organization of information that goes out? Is it a monthly newsletter, a quarterly program update? What are the schedule of conference calls, WebEx, forums, person-to-person training, whether you're going to be meeting at ICEF fairs 4 times a year, or whether there are going to be other scheduled country visits. Does the agent partner have an in-country, a destination country client team to represent their counselors, or is there going to sort of necessarily be more travel? But not only that, so should the education provider be asking for perhaps an update of visibility and transparency in terms of, are they able to access the information that represents their institution and their programs? And is that, again, an annual cycle or a quarterly cycle? Again, we're lucky at IDP that our education provider partners can access this in real time, because we think that this transparency ultimately serves the interests of the students. But if this is not available in real time, I think from an education provider's point of view, you would want to have it on an annual basis.
Uri, thank you very much for this very useful information and suggestions about the onboarding process. And ICEF Monitor will keep you informed, and I hope to see you soon.
Great, thank you.